Right, welcome back. You're watching SA Today here on SABC News with me, Flo Ledwaba. Well, convicted murderer Nthuthuko Shoba will know his fate at noon tomorrow. Shoba's lawyers have asked the court not to impose a life sentence when handing down sentencing. Shoba's lawyers are arguing mitigation of sentence at the High Court in Johannesburg. Shoba was found guilty of masterminding the death of his pregnant girlfriend Tshegofatso Pule in 2020. He was implicated after convicted hitman Mzikayise Malepane turned state witness. The 8 months pregnant Pule was hung from a tree in Roodepoort in the west of Johannesburg in 2020. Well, Pule's defense urged the court not to hand down a judgment that may be perceived as cruel, inhumane or degrading. They are persuading the court not to impose life imprisonment. The state is expected to argue for a maximum sentence. Shoba maintained his innocence throughout the trial. All right, let's discuss this further then. In terms of what happened in court today, we are joined in our studio by specialist reporter Hasina Gori. Hasina, very good afternoon to you. Of course, you've been on this case for quite some time now. Let's talk about what the defense lawyer had to say today, Norman Makubelo, pleading that, the High Court not give Nthuthuko Shoba a life sentence. And I thought it was particularly ironic, this particular part here, persuading the court not to impose a sentence that may be perceived as cruel, inhumane and degrading. And certainly this is how the young lady was found hanging from a tree in Roodepoort, those particular words. But in any case, let's move away from that. Let's talk about the defense and what they were saying during the time that they were pleading in mitigation of sentence.
Good afternoon, Flo. And yes, as you mentioned, they started their argument saying, that a harsher sentence can be just as bad as a lenient sentence, that while there might be a public outcry, that they should take into account that this is Nthuthuko Shoba's first offense. And they also argued and pleaded with the court to not take his maintaining of his innocence as a lack of remorse, because the judge did bring in that if you do not plead guilty and you still maintain your innocence, that means you've shown no remorse because you're not agreeing that you've actually mitigated that kind of action. And so they're saying that should not be an aggravated circumstance to impose a harsher sentence. But they also quite interestingly brought in the sentence that Mzikayise Malepane was able to get during his plea bargain with the state, turning state witness and getting a 20-year life imprisonment versus a life imprisonment. And they're saying that the court should take into account that they're both co-accused and that since he was given a lesser sentence, that should also be taken into account when it comes to Shoba's sentence that will be handed down tomorrow, that there should be parity in the way that the sentencing needs to be taken. They said that while he might not have shown remorse, he has shown sympathy for the loss of lives that was taken. However, the state has argued, for the harsher sentence or the maximum sentence which would be life imprisonment to be taken into account when the judge does hand down sentencing, saying that his not showing remorse should be an aggravated circumstance. Also talking around the issue of a co-accused, that while Mzikayise Malepane has confessed to the murder and the executing Tshegofatso Pule, he did not act alone and he was not the mastermind. There would be no crime here committed. Mzikayise Malepane would not be in jail right now had it not been for Shoba planning out and orchestrating this hit and contacting him and paying him. So saying that that's why the harsher sentence should be given to Mzikayise Malepane, to Shoba.
Generally, judges are quite harsh on this issue of showing some sense of remorse. And I mean, you've been sitting in court, you've had the opportunity then to see Nthuthuko Shoba. I mean, from his body language, from television, I've not been able to read, whether or not this is someone who's devastated, but by his own actions. I mean, what can you say when it comes to his behavior throughout court this whole time that you've been covering the case?
So I was, on this case from the onset, from 2020 when the killings took place and Mzikayise Malepane was first arrested, as well as Shoba. And one thing we've seen consistently throughout all his court applications was this kind of action from him that he did not think that he would be caught out. He really truly believed that the court will believe his version of events, that he had no part and had no play in this whole crime being committed, that he was a doting father-to-be with a woman that was not his partner, and that she knew the status quo, that he left her that day, he called an Uber for her, and that was him showing care. And he really, really, truly believed that the court would go in his favor. And the only time you've seen his demeanor change, it was I think today was the first time you can see how much of a toll this entire process has taken. He's always been dressed for it smartly, always, really well put together, but showed no kind of emotion at all. And the state brought this up today. The state attorney, Fakhri Mohammed, brought today that watching him in court, that video of the last time that Tshegofatso Pule was ever seen alive leaving his home, that video was played numerous times in court, and not once had he ever shown any emotion. Also, while he showed sympathy for the loss of life, he never once showed any kind of sadness over the loss of his unborn baby. While he and Tshegofatso Pule may not have been traditional in a traditional relationship, he did not show any kind of sadness that Mzikayise Malepane had taken away his chance of being a father for the first time. So those showed that there was no real showing of any remorse, and I don't even think he's taken accountability yet that he's actually, done this actions.
All right, so Shoba is to know his fate tomorrow. We understand at noon a sentence will be handed down. The expectation is that he will, in fact, be getting a life sentence. Of course, this is the general sort of conversations that people have been having, and saying that it should serve as some sort of deterrent, just because in South Africa we're dealing with all these gender-based violence cases and femicide. Is that what the understanding is, even as you sit in court, that this guy is going to get
I think that's the understanding and the hope from the family, from the activists that are around there, that they've actually, in their own personal way, outside of the legal space, asked for a double life sentence, not just for the life of Tshegofatso Pule, but also the unborn baby, saying that that should be 2 life sentences, because he'd taken 2 lives away from them as a family. It's been a long process. He's, brought court battles. We might actually see him appeal this, once, this entire process has been completed. You might see him, bring in an appeal, which would just prolong that closure for the family. But really, it would be a harsh sentence that they're asking for, just because, and I think the state said this today, that he took advantage of her vulnerability as a female, and that should be
a young female. Like that,
and she had relied on him for certain things. The judge even said, she relied on him for her transportation, for various other things, and he abused that trust that she had given to him, and that should be what he's held accountable for. And I think that the judge, it will take a very exceptional circumstances for him to deviate from the normative and from that harsh sentence, which would be life imprisonment for his natural life.
Hasina Gori, many thanks to you, and I'll certainly be hearing from you tomorrow afternoon when that sentence is indeed handed down. Thanks very much, Hasina Gori, a specialist reporter there who has been on this case for us.